India Charts publishes Nifty daily video updates, the weekly Elliott Wave outlook, and the long shot report covering all asset classes.
I'm going to cover a couple of interesting charts today, and we'll start with Brazil because it's one of the BRICS and you may or may not call it an emerging market. Now, definitely a commodity producer, and it had been in this tight range, and I've discussed the dollar cycles many times in previous videos. And during the rising dollar environment, because it's commodity producer, its entire market from 2010 to 2016 remained under pressure. So it went through a long consolidation phase, unlike probably what India did. India was rising more slowly, if we call that a consolidation, at least in currency adjusted terms or inflation adjusted terms. We too went through a consolidation, but this was outright in notional terms. You can see that on the Brazil index, and it broke out of that in 2017. That's when the dollar bear market really started. Okay, so for those who are not aware of the dollar bear market, you probably have to, check a chart of the dollar index, and that would give you a perspective. But what I want to really discuss is what's followed. So you had this first major wave in Brazil, a big rally into 2020, and during the second dollar shock, it had this deep correction. Now, what has followed is a meaningful rally, which I think we can mark as wave 1. And wave 2 into the lows. And this is of course the broader marking. So the entire rise is essentially an impulsive 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. And what we really started subsequent to that is another first wave. So you're really thinking that, where will this stop? Will it pull back like the first time? But then this is a major third wave. And what is happening here, it's pretty trending strongly. And this is what you can see across most of Asia or, many of the emerging markets. The developed markets are a little different, but of course there too you're seeing extensions. And say if you look at the small cap index like the Russell 2000, and what's really working here, so if you really look at momentum, that's not working. If you look at RSI on many things, you'll find that it's already hitting 75, 79 or even the 80s in some of the indices. But what's happening is you're simply continuing to do what classic Dow theory suggests, a series of higher highs and higher lows. And if we just keep trailing with the higher lows, then you probably stay in the trend. So that's sometimes the easiest thing is what you need to do than something more complicated. Looking at, divergences at times of strong trends does not really work. Overbought readings don't work. The only thing that works is simple trend following. So you can do that with something like this, or else use trend lines, moving averages and so on. So those things work better in a strongly trending market. So looking at the RSI for Brazil, 75.9. High, but well, in this kind of a phase, you don't know what's high, and it won't end without you getting actually maybe a negative divergence on the RSI itself. So till that point of time, you may continue to see an extension. The second interesting chart is actually gold. When you see this, you see a very clean 50% retracement from the high that it made in August. In fact, in gold, for those of you who track it closely and may even be watching the CFTC data, which shows the futures in, futures positioning of traders versus, commercials. And that had the longest long position for managed money, not only here, but way back here, So even September, October of last year, positions appeared high and it looked like the market should correct it. All it did is consolidate. It subsequently broke out. This decline has been subject to the pandemic sell-off, but the positioning did not really change substantially during that sell-off. The decline was very limited, and eventually longs continued to drive it up. Now that's not the history, because historically whenever you see large longs or this was an all-time record, then you get the market correcting the other way. But during a bull market, and everyone knows this, is that everyone gets paid. Even stupid positions get paid. And so that's what ended up happening here, which is a signature of the underlying longer term bullish trend, that, long positions being at a record still got paid eventually if they held through it all the way to $2,000. Now, after that, you've still got a correction which has been a meaningful 50% retracement. But once again, we seem to be trending up. This may have just been a consolidation phase, a pullback in another subdivision of its long-term Elliott wave structure. And what you may have started is the next move up. The breakout point, of course, will be out of the top trend line around 1920. And once you break out of that, I would think that, you know, we are ready to go back to all-time highs again in the precious metals as well. So when we are really looking at the relationship between commodity prices and equity prices, and I put out a chart also on that recently, and this chart is inspired by Martin Pring because he's put that as part of his business cycle study. That is the relationship between three different markets, that is bonds, equities and commodities, and how they intercorrelate with each other. And this is important because right now when you're seeing commodity prices rise and last year they were falling and you don't really know how to put it in perspective, you wonder about inflation coming back. And then there's this whole anomaly about people thinking that if oil prices go up, then well, it's bad for the economy. So how we really address that whole situation is understanding how these cycles interact with each other. And so this is an important setup to really get in your mind because it fits with the business cycle over and over again. What you really see is that in financial markets, when you look at bond prices, so the bond market cycle is usually the first to go. It tends to head down and then up and then rolls over down again. Followed by that is the equity cycle. The equity cycle also comes from a previous downdraft, heads down, bottoms out, turns up and continues down this cycle. And lastly, you get followed by commodities. The commodity cycle does something similar. And so in a sense, what we are saying is throughout the business cycle, we have three of these different aspects of the market interacting with each other. So we are looking at bonds first, followed by equities, and then lastly, you have the commodities. Now, as these cycles interact, so what you really get, and you can see this even in, say, the late 1990s, as you headed into the tech bubble, you actually had the Fed raising interest rates. So, what that really means is that bond prices start to fall. So, if bond prices are at a high, you know, they start to decline. So, let's start at the bottom of the cycle. Why do bond prices bottom out and start to rise? So, first of all, bond prices are rising because of what we also know as the risk of trade, right? And risk of trade means you're selling equities and you're buying bonds. So bonds are rising, equities are falling at this stage of the cycle. And as bond prices continue to rise, rates are going down, eventually kicks off an equity cycle. And then with some lag, and sometimes in panic markets, you know, many of these markets can at the bottom. So this is of course just a, it's a map. There can be slight variations. All three in a panic one-way sell-off can bottom out together as well. But this is generally what you see. So if you see even March of 2020, you'll find most commodities bottoming in March, but then oil made its panic low where the futures went negative in the first week or second week of April, a little later than where equities bottomed. So that's what we may see. Even 2008, we can see that where equities, some indices like India bottomed in October of that year, but many other indices continued to fall till March of that year. And so there's that lead lag effect, which is why in late stages of the cycle you see divergences, and many of these divergences then get written about as if they are macro trends. But usually when there's a trend, then you find everything moving in the same direction. So similarly at the peak, once equities have gone up substantially, there is a sense of comfort. And when there's that sense of comfort, that's when this happens. Equities are still rising, but bond prices start to fall, which means that interest rates start to go up. So money moves out of bonds into equities. And also the reserve banks or central banks, as you can see in the US, started to raise rates, like I was saying earlier, in the late 1990s into the tech bubble, or in 2007 into the housing crisis. So earlier they had cut rates into the after the tech bust in 2001, 2, and then as things kept improving, they start slowly raising rates and bond prices start going down, and eventually equities peter out later on once all the money is reallocated to equities and you have the final peak. Then equities roll over, and then commodities follow that eventually. So commodities don't necessarily peak at the same time, and that you could see in 2008, even though US peaked in October, India in January, but commodity prices continued to go up in terms of at least oil, Gold peaked in March of that year, and then in June is where you got the commodity price peak through oil prices going to $140 almost. So this is how the lead lag occurs, and so it repeats cycle after cycle, and we can see it in the current year as well. Right now bond prices have not yet started to fall substantially. They still sort of, if you see, they may be a bit off, yields have gone up a bit, but they are very much at the top end of the range if you really look at a 1-2 year of chart. So you really not see a decline like previous declines on it, and equities are still rising, commodities are still rising. So what this all this really means is that because commodities are a reflection of the economy. When oil goes up, it means there's demand picking up, or things are at least improving. So it's the delta. It's not that demand has gone back to peak levels where it was 2 years ago, but the delta of expectations and demand is actually what the markets really map. It's not the particular level of where markets are, whether they are high or overvalued, but the delta of change from where you are at that point of time in terms of sentiment, in terms of growth, in terms of expectations. So all of that gets mapped, and that's what we are really seeing. So when we go back to our charts and we look at rising or falling prices, so we can see this is a historical chart of oil, that is Brent, and equity, that is Nifty on top. And when you see Brent and Nifty on the same slide for the last 2 years, what you broadly see is prices going up or down sort of together. Now there can be lead lags, like you may not find this top at exactly the same date as the previous one, but generally speaking, when you look at this time period, you see that prices are gone up, and they sort of peaked here. There is some lead lag effect. Okay, so while equities peaked a few days earlier, oil peaked a few days later. Eventually both declined, and then again equities bottom out and bonds bottom out with some lead lag. So there's always that lead lag at the broad end of the cycle, but generally speaking, when one of them is positive, so is the other. And if we can say that oil prices are heading up, then equity prices are also likely to follow, or vice versa. So now lastly, if we just look at the price of oil, what we really see here is what we always like in Elliott wave terms, a clear ABC correction. So we have a B wave triangle. Now triangles are usually 5-wave structures, which we in Elliott waves we mark as A, B, C, D and E. And once that is complete, you end up in a wave C, which is again similar to A, in this case extended, probably 161% of wave A itself. So we can actually measure that, and you'd find that Fibonacci ratio sometimes fits so perfectly well in terms of getting you to those eventual projections. So there you are, 161% reverse retracement would have gone all the way down to $22, and of course you had the spike that in Brent took you to almost 19.57. Okay, and then the subsequent bounce back has filled this gap, and the way I look at it now is the start of a new move on the way up, which means oil is in a bullish trend. I've posted a chart of the shorter term structure, which I'll just come to today. It's there on Twitter, and that's the subdivisions that are really happening within this third wave. Now, if this is a third wave, of course, the first, because it came from a extreme panic low, was very, very sharp. And in terms of WTI, it had gone negative. So it had hit $6-7, and from there it came back to 20-25, and then slowly has edged up towards the $30-35 mark, and then pulled back in wave 2. Now what you're seeing, so will it be as fast as the first wave? Definitely not, but you are seeing a very, very gradual and continuous rise in oil prices, which is quite amazing. Even though it is appearing slow, or rather slower than the first time, it is pretty substantial, because in terms of Brent here, the low end we'd gone to is $35, and right now yesterday we've closed at $51. So that's quite a bit. And if I try to count the subdivisions here, we may have possibly completed a 4 and maybe a 5 either here or here. At one of these places we may have completed one subset, and this is an extended move going on, which means maybe we've started a third wave inside this, and which is still just extending from here on. So if we actually take a parallel channel for the entire structure and look at where the third wave can go, or we look at if the third wave can be equal to the first in terms of, or have some Fibonacci ratio to it, the top end of the channel itself takes you to $61. So we are already looking at much higher prices for US crude oil. There can be different reasons. People are coming up with fundamental arguments. Those who can't see the demand pickup are actually looking at, the new president actually going backwards on shale. Now, we don't know which of those will really play out eventually, because this is still a developing situation. But one of them will eventually influence prices, and that's what they are reacting to. In fact, this spike here somewhere was also associated with some geopolitical news in the Middle East. And so you don't know. What the charts are indicating is that you are into a third wave. There are always multiple drivers. And what we can broadly see is that equities are also following through. And so it goes back to that delta of expectations of improvement rather than particularly which level is right in terms of demand and supply. Because if you look at the very short term, there have been a lot of inventory data points in the last week or so, which would be reflective of, it's time for a correction in oil. But it's really not responding to that either. So right now, just looking at this 1, 2, 3 structure and the parallel channel, it's still looking like we have another $5-10 upside to go on this, unless we really break below the swing low we made few days ago at 49.13 for Brent. And if that is true, by the same correlation of equity to oil, what should equities continue to do? Probably continue to head higher, despite what looks like, I said earlier, in the case of Brazil, overbought readings. We can also see that in the case of the mid-cap index, RSIs are well over 80. But when we look at price action, we continue to see higher highs and higher lows consistently, even on the Nifty. Until that pattern really changes, we cannot really say that the trend has changed, because neither overbought readings nor divergences are really working in being able to make that call. Now, many of you may already be aware that we are publishers of the long short report, and we looked at multiple alternate wave counts and had a very detailed discussion last Sunday. The recording is under the long short video update, and so you can access that if you are a first time user. Simply need to log in and create an account, and you can view that detailed session. It's almost 45 minutes to 1 hour. And with that, I'll see you all again next time. Thank you.